We are storytellers by nature, sharing with others what we experience, perceive, and believe of life, our joys, adventures, our losses. We tell ourselves stories as well. Some leave us trapped by false beliefs and self-doubt. But there are also stories of persisting, exploring, and rising above. Stories of uncovering the truth, enabling powerful transformation and triumph. These are those stories. These are your stories. Hello, folks. I disappeared. Where'd I go? Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is time for And So It Is, Stories of Truth, Transformation, and Triumph. My name is Zoe DeMuro. My pronouns are he and him. I'm a spiritual counselor, religious science practitioner with the New Thought Media Network, and a transformational coach. My ministry and my mission are to help people co-create their most authentic and most fulfilling life experience. So I am truly honored and excited to bring you this show. I do this each Saturday, the first Saturday of each month, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time. So if this is your first time here, great to see you. And if you're returning, welcome back. Each episode of this show, what we do is we hear stories from people like you, like me, who have been held back by false and limiting beliefs, but have managed to uncover their truth and enabling them to transform their life experience and to triumph because of their spiritual journey. The very name of this show, And So It Is, came about because people would tell me, I didn't think that I could do this. I didn't think I could be this. I didn't think that this could happen. I didn't think that this would ever be. And following their transformation, they were able to say, And so it is. So let's get on with today's show. I am truly honored to have Lara Brzezinski as my guest today. Lara is one of those amazing people with a long list of roles and accomplishments. So I'm going to have to give you a very brief view into her life. With over 15 years as a licensed religious science practitioner and as the founder of Radiant Joy Coaching, she's been a dynamic force in the world of personal growth and transformation and brings a powerful blend of spiritual wisdom and practical strategies to her work and her ministry. Please join me in welcoming Lara Brzezinski.
Thank you, Zoe, for having me.
Oh, such a delight, such a delight. So what we do is we need to know, where are you right now? Where are we starting in your life today? And where are we starting in this story? So take it away.
Perfect. Well, I will start with all my wall decorations. Joy. I can say that I am very happy. I'm joy-filled to be living a joyful life. That I started Radiant Joy Coaching because of my journey and my transformation. And so where I am today is waking up every day with the thought, wow, today's going to be a great day. I wonder what exciting, amazing, fun things are going to unfold today. And inevitably, I have wonderful stories at the end of the day about what worked, what went well, what I want to celebrate. And that's how I live each day now, which is very different from where I was a number of years ago. So,
All right.
Just and going back, you had said, where the journey started. I feel like my first awakening into there's a better way of life, a better way of living was when I was in my 20s. And I was somebody that on the outside had incredible drive and I was always going and doing. But inside, I was full of comparison. I was full of doubt and I'm not good enough. And so my outward was always an effort to prove myself, but I didn't know it. And that first glimpse into there could be more was meeting somebody, a woman who had this expression, this outward expression of quiet confidence and joy and peace. And I remember thinking, I want that. And I didn't know how to go about getting it. And I really didn't know her. And she just came into my life to drop that picture that, wow, it could be different than how I'm feeling on the inside and how I'm doing. And from there, I just kept doing and chasing and running. And it wasn't until that I came across the science of mind that it really, my life really started to transform. Because one of the first teachings I learned was I get to, I have to take responsibility for my own life. And there was a pivotal moment when I realized that my now husband and I, who had met prior to us finding the science of mind, dating, and I broke it off because it was all his fault. It was all him. And through the teachings and the learnings of this first class, I realized, oh, wow, I have a part in this. And it shifted my perspective on me being, the in charge of how I think, in charge of how I feel, in charge of the actions, where I had just been doing it from a different perspective. It was more about the getting, and it wasn't about the being and who am I being. And that led to shortly after a conversation, another pivotal moment. I had shared with you, Zoe, about having being at a family dinner with my brother, or excuse me, my sister, and her husband. My parents were visiting. We were living in Utah, and there was the conversation around dinner just didn't feel comfortable. But in that moment, I wasn't able to speak up. And the next day, I approached my dad and just expressed how I felt about how the conversation went. And I will never forget this moment when he said, wow, you're finally standing up to your old man. And I could see he was actually proud of me in that moment, because he had a smile on his face and he was like, wow, right on. But what came out of me was, I'm not standing up to you. I'm standing up for me. And I didn't plan it. I didn't prepare it. It just came out. And it has stuck with me because that was one of the first moments where I really went, oh, wow, I can stand up for me. I can have my own opinion, my own voice. Now, having a very domineering father, right? That was powerful to say, no, I can have my own opinion, my own voice. And now I finally feel strong enough to express it to you. And so that's why that was another really pivotal, I can't say that word today, pivotal moment in my life. And that's part of what I teach, that for each one of us is realizing we are the makers of our own stories, that we are responsible for our own health, our happiness, our relationships, everything. And that we do get to have a voice. Our voice matters. Our opinions matter. And all of that. And it's just been unfolding in different ways since then.
Good. You took a breath. All right. I know how exciting all of this is. And in the time that I've known you, I've seen just this unbelievable change just in the short time that I've known you. But I wanted to go back to a couple of things, because in order for people to understand the importance of the transformation, I want them to get a better sense of how this was affecting your life in terms of being held back by your false belief. So I heard you mention a domineering father. Okay. And I heard you say that you really just we're always looking to prove yourself in some way, shape, or form. So how do these fit together?
So I grew up in a household that from the outside resembled the perfect American dream. Excuse me. My dad worked, mom stayed home and took care of us. We got to take vacations. I was able to do sports growing up. And yet somehow, somewhere along the way, as the third child, I decided, and we don't know why, we don't know when, that I wasn't good enough, that I might have been a mistake. My brother and sister were really close in age, and my sister was always wanting to keep up with him. So the gap between her and I widened just because there was more time between the two of us, but because it was the two of them and me. And so I had this sense of I couldn't keep up. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't fast enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't. And you know, in hindsight, the pattern was I didn't try. There was a lot of places where I didn't push myself because I didn't want to be compared to my sister because I believed I would never measure up. So I don't want anyone to be able to say, "Oh yeah, see, you're not as smart as her. You're not as athletic." So I always had a built-in excuse. Well, I didn't give it my all. And it's sad, really. You know, when you look back, you're like, "Oh man, I held myself back," right? Who knows why? But I realized that it did develop in me a sense of independence. And so I would, on one hand, go out and say, I'm going to prove myself. I am going to go, you know, try this, do this. But there was always that escape clause. So if I failed, it was like, well, I didn't give it my all. I do remember also developing this sense of, you know, proving my value by doing things for other people. And look how worthy I am because I just did that for you. And I would do things for people without asking if they wanted help. And sometimes that backfired. And so then I took it personally. You don't like me. I'm not good enough because you didn't like my help. I remember a time where I was so determined to prove that I was capable and strong and look how good I am. I was attempting to put my windsurfer on the top of my pickup truck. And so it was a Toyota extended cab and had a shell. And so the rack was up there. And I'm not short, but I'm not tall. And I was really fighting to get it up there. And my sister came along and said, "You want some help?" And I said, "No, because when I get there to the reservoir, I have to be able to put it on myself to get home." And she said, "You'll figure it out when you're there. But right here, I'm here and I could help you. I could make your life easier." And I still refused. And I realized there was a pattern of that through my life that I would refuse help just to prove I'm capable, I'm good enough, I'm strong enough, whatever it is. And so there's a lot of places where I see that I would do the hokey pokey, where I would, you know, put one foot out and go, "Oh, okay, that was okay." And then I would put my whole self in, but then any kind of criticism or, you know, anything, I pulled my whole self out. So again, from the outside, it was like, "But Lara, you're brave and you do this and you do this." I'm like, "Oh yeah, but didn't you notice how I jump back?" Right? I would put a toe in the water and then step back. And I realized it was all of these limiting beliefs of I'm gonna be judged, I'm gonna be criticized. And so I would test it, but then and I could see the pattern when I did get criticism, it took a long time to do a similar action again. And this was apparent through years and years and years. And what I learned about limiting beliefs is you have to put your foot out there. You have to test the water. You have to play the hokey pokey. And then enough times of putting yourself all the way out there, you do break through. And it's been through years of reframing, recognizing these limiting beliefs and reframing and putting myself out there and doing the different things. It's like, okay, you know, that what I did get criticized, but so what? Right? Or I survived. I'm actually okay from all of these. So I'm taking another breath.
Uh, so was it was that event with your dad standing up for yourself, was that pivotal moment for you, or was that something that was sort of a culmination of a series of things?
That was, I would say, one of the biggest breakthroughs because I finally took my parents off their pedestal and realized they're not always right. And it opened up the doorway for me to explore. But this journey of getting to that quiet confidence, to that joy that that woman had, it started with me giving myself permission to explore, to be brave, and to, like, you know what? That's not always right. So I have to do what's right for me. And it has been years of reading and listening to different uh, authors and speakers within the science of mind and without. And I remember another awakening was just realizing the why I was doing what I was doing, and going, wow, I do things for people to prove I'm worthy. And when I had that realization, and unfortunately it wasn't that long ago, it was a major shift. It gave me permission to say, oh, you know what? When I do stuff for people and they want my help, it feels really good inside. So now I do it from a place of it fills me versus it gives me value. And and there was another pivotal moment where I heard Stephen Furtick, who's a Christian pastor, but he's very broad in his speaking, right? It's very open
Mhm.
and welcoming, where he said, ask a mom why she loves her kids. And the answer was, well, because they're mine, right? It was so simple, so obvious. Well, they're mine. Of course I love my kids. And he said, but you grow up and you are out of mom's care. And mom's always going to love you, but she passes that responsibility on to you. He said, it's time for you to claim that for yourself. I am mine. And I'd heard this in different ways, but on that day, it really spoke to me. I hadn't claimed I'm mine. I'm mine to love. I'm mine to care for. I am mine to pay attention to what I want and who I want to be around and what I want to do and how I want to express, like all of the things that come from I'm my own responsibility.
Mm.
And that's pretty powerful instead of like, oh, I'm my own responsibility now, right? There's the shift, but I took it on as like it was freeing. Wow. I the freeing part is when you realize too, I don't get to blame anybody else anymore. oh, oh crap. Oh yay. Right. That I get to be in control. And so it shifts to that place of power of, all right, what would I love? How would I love my life to look like? And that was the shift of not doing things to please anyone else, not doing things because this is what how there's many people who grow up thinking, well, this is what mom and dad think would be the right path for me. So, we follow that path. We go to school, we get the good job, we get the, and then wake up and go, I'm not in love with my life. I don't love what I'm doing. It's not filling me. And I was on that path as well of, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I would put a toe in the water. I have a path of entrepreneurial effort, going back and working for someone else, entrepreneurial effort, going back and working for somebody else. And it was the, okay, that didn't go so well. That was scary. I'm going to go back to my perceived safety of having someone else tell me what to do, when to show up, and what they're going to pay me. And then I would get constricted in that and say, no, I got to go back to working for myself because of that freedom. And eventually it has transformed into like learning that I get to decide every morning, how do I want to set the tone for my day? I want to have a fabulous day. All right. So I'm going to start with that affirmation. Today is going to be a great day. Something amazing is happening in my life today. I wonder what it is. And just having that energy, and also where Radiant Joy coaching came from was the realization that joy doesn't just show up in a package from Amazon. Like you can order something like, oh, that's fun. But true joy, it's nurtured, right? True happiness is nurtured from within. And so it's about how can I create moments for me to experience happiness, for me to experience joy? How can I ignite that joy within? And when I figured that out for myself, it was like, that was a huge epiphany. I was like, I get to create joy in my life. And again, as the learning of when I give it out, it fills me. So that's where my practice of handing out little yellow joys came from. Because in that moment, when I hand someone a joy, it's been fascinating to see their faces light up as like, oh, you just gave me a gift. Oh, it's joy. And then like people look at it and then they look back at me and I see that smile that I have just gifted them a moment of joy. And so that I receive it back. And it's been so fulfilling from the simplest, right? Handing a little yellow piece of plastic. And then what has unfolded from that also is when people will see me again that know me and say, oh, my joy is in my bathroom and I see it every morning. My joy is in my kitchen. And so I see it in the morning and it lights me up, right? I realize there is that ripple effect. And that too is the basis for all of our teachings, yours and mine, is that when I am being in a space of calm, when I'm being in a space of love or joy, I'm carrying myself out into the world. And so that's the ripple, that working on myself first, on my own self-confidence, on my own enoughness, and that I have value and I have a right to take up space, all of those things, when I can feel secure and confident and full of joy, then when I go out into the world, that's the energy I'm putting out that is then getting reflected back at me. Mm-hmm. One of the simplest practices I learned from Louise Hay is when you look in the mirror, really look at that person. And when you smile at the person in the mirror, that image in the mirror smiles back. And it's the same when we go out in the world. When mostly, it's not often that I don't get a smile back, but when I smile at that image out in the world, that image smiles back. So whether it's my image in the mirror or that person that I'm standing before, it's that giving out and receiving. And that's where the true joy of life comes from. It's just a simple smile.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. And so describes you so well. So I'm looking at this incredible journey. I mean, you're starting off as this person who just did not truly believe in her own worth. I mean, there was no way that when you live your life in comparison, you're always going to lose.
Yes.
No matter how you look at it, you'll always lose. And your concerns, of course, from that, now it's, well, what am I going to be good enough to do what I want to do? Am I going to be good enough? Do I have to follow the path, or can I branch out? Well, that would mean you have to be responsible. And I love the way you phrase that, because there's a difference between responsible as in, this is my burden. This is what I have to do. This is my requirement, as opposed to, this is my ability to respond.
Yes.
To life. Yes. My ability to respond to the things that I want to bring forward, my ability to respond to my loved ones, my ability to respond to those who aren't my loved ones, but I want them to be because I want to understand them. That's a wonderful path.
Yes.
You had mentioned finding science of mind. How did you find science of mind?
I'm sorry.
How did you find science of mind?
Oh, it's a really fun story. Robert and I had just started dating, and I was raised Lutheran, and I was still somewhat practicing. And I knew that having that consistency in my life was powerful. However, I had questions that the Lutheran pastors couldn't answer for me. So there was still a place in me that was questioning. And Robert defined God at the time as the great outdoors. And he grew up in a household that did not have a regular practicing religion. He said, I probably was in church twice, and both of those for weddings. And that was it. But I wanted him to experience that connection, right? To there's something greater than me, and there's a power, and it's supportive. And so we started testing out churches. He didn't like the Lutheran church. So I said, okay, let's go find one that we can agree on. And we lived in Salt Lake City at the time, and there's an amazing plethora of opportunities to dive into a religious path there. And so we went to this one. He didn't like that. And he finally said, Lara, I appreciate what you want here. However, I don't feel comfortable sitting in an environment where for 45 minutes they tell me I'm worthless, I'm not good enough, and that I can't, figure it out on my own. And then the last 10 minutes or 15 minutes telling me that, oh, I can be worthy if I follow this path, if I believe in this and through, this person. And that was probably the first time where somebody had spelled out to me part of why it didn't feel good. Right. And that was, again, part of my upbringing. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. My church told me, in addition to whatever messages that I had picked up in my own household. So a friend of mine, she's now a religious science minister. Her name's Reverend Barbara Novak, knew that we were searching. And she dropped off a book called The Science of Mind. And said, here, read this. And it's also part of a community. They meet on Sundays, but this will explain to you what it is. And I left it at home, and I went to work that day. Robert was off that day, so he picked it up and started reading it. And he kept reading and reading. And I don't remember how far he got into it. But by the time I got home, he said, oh my goodness, what is this? Where did you get this? And I said, well, Barbara said there's a church. And so we went the following Sunday. And at the time, I was creating a restaurant. And so I didn't believe I had the time to go to the second service with the senior minister, even though she said, you got to hear Reverend Donald Graves. He's amazing. But there's an earlier one with the associate minister, Reverend Jan Ewing. And I was like, all right, we'll go to the first one. And if we liked it, we could go back. We went to the first one. The two of us, coming from our different religious perspectives, looked at each other and said, oh my goodness. And she's the associate minister. We got to hear what the senior minister has to say. So we went out to breakfast, and then we went back for the second service that day. And after that, the rest is history. Robert jumped into the foundations course to really learn all about it. And I remember him saying, if this is a cult, I'll figure it out. Right? Because it just seemed like the message was like pretty incredible. And so that was, and opening the restaurant, I was like, I don't have time to take a class. So he took the foundations class. And then in January, I took it. And I will say that the path that we're on, he and we've come here with some interesting agendas, the things to heal. If you believe in, you come in with soul contracts. And I truly believe it was the teaching and the pathway that he and I each took. He went through the practitioner training first and then said, I want to become a minister in this. I want to teach this. and I went through the practitioner training shortly after. The tools that we learned in there is what has helped us through all of the shifts and the changes and the challenges that we've had in our lives, that has helped us to be a really strong team.
That's great. It's funny. I had been handed the exact same book when I first approached Science of Mind, and I looked at it and I read the first page and I said, I don't understand any of this. So then they handed me a copy of Science Mind magazine. I said, oh, okay.
Right.
And then I was able to get into the book. So you have, you have a lot of transformation in your life. And one of the things that has been very clear to me is that transformation is something that does not happen simply once. There are many times that it can happen. So you had spoken about your initial breakthrough, and you spoke about finding Science of Mind. What are some of the other breakthroughs that you've had in the more recent times?
Well, I will share. This has been the most powerful for me, was quitting drinking. And I'm at 444 days of not having alcohol. And I am somebody who has chosen not to go the path of, thank you, of claiming that I'm a recovering alcoholic, because for me, it was a tool that I was using to hide. It was a tool that I was using to help me stay within my I'm not good enough. I feel strong enough that I don't, not that there's anything wrong with that. It just wasn't the path for me of saying I just am 444 days free of that that barrier, that in a sense, that jailer that was keeping me from shining my light and living my truth. The transformation happened when I was in a space, our house, we literally were in a basement. Our bedroom was in the basement, and I had surgery and it didn't go well. And so I was laying there in bed with my foot up, not able to walk, not able to do a lot. And I was feeling sorry for myself. And so I was keeping myself company with hard seltzers instead of like, all right, you're going to get through this. It's going to, right? That for whatever reason, I just got into a space of using that to numb how I was really feeling. And fortunately, I started questioning and saying, why am I doing this more often? It used to be alcohol was the weekends. It was a celebration. It was, when you had a party, that I didn't consider myself an alcoholic because it was only more a celebration thing, until it got to be the point that for a few weeks it wasn't. And it was, wow, this is not good. I'm waking up with headaches. I just, all of the things. And it culminated. So I began to question, why are you choosing to use this, right? Instead of coming out of the basement and, even if you're on your crutches, get out. So I realized it was just a tool. And so I started investigating. I first started, I just want to learn to drink moderately again. And not really realizing that there's more to it, right? That it wasn't just about the drinking, it's what's underneath. What are you running from, hiding from? What are you, using it to numb? And so it did take me quite a few stops and starts, right? So this whole journey of transformation and healing, I was not able to just say, oh, I don't need this anymore. I had to do a lot of inquiry into, why am I choosing this? And what are the feelings? And so I turned to a lot of resources. I turned to this naked mind. her first name's Annie. I can't remember. That was a great book that opened my awareness up to, oh, wow, right? It's not about the drinking. It's what is the drinking hiding? What are you hiding from? All of that. And I read other books and I stopped and I did join online support that was, here's some tips and things. And the first time that I made it 82 days. And interestingly enough, I put myself out there with two different people that were very important to me. And they both rejected me when I was sharing something and criticized. And I remember it was a Sunday and I went, I think now's a good time to go have a glass of red wine. And so I broke my 82-day streak and sat outside and had my wine. But this time it was the awareness of, why did you choose this? You went 82 days without needing alcohol. And so I enjoyed that glass of wine. And then I think it was a couple more days of feeling sorry for myself. And then I went, you know what? No, you don't need to feel sorry for yourself. And their rejection of that idea they weren't rejecting you, right? It was all of that. So diving in again, and then I was able to let go again and like, oh, okay. So that transformation happened. Like when I finally let go for the last time, I celebrated. It was right after my dad had passed, and we had been celebrating his life. And so I did have some alcohol as part of the celebration. But when I flew home from New Hampshire to Colorado, I toasted him. And I said, you know what? This is my honoring and celebration of you. And I'm going to let this go as part of that honoring and celebrating my dad. And that's part of why it's stuck. That I have been able to, because I don't want to break that streak and I don't want to dishonor my dad, but just because of all of the diving in and the questioning and then realizing how good it feels to not hide. And when I have the feelings come up and that thought is, oh, I could really use a glass of wine right now. It's like, why do you think that? And over time of the questioning, the why do you feel like that's going to solve whatever you're feeling? It's like, and the secret is it comes to leaning into the feelings and not trying to hide the feelings, stuff them down, mask them, whatever it is. And so that has been my most recent bringing transformation and lesson was, why do you think you need whatever it is you need, whether it's the ice cream or the chocolate or whatever that addictive behavior is? What are you feeling? And what are you afraid of to feel that? And just, allow the feeling to come up and question. And man, that's so much easier. We're like, and not just doing that behavior. And that's part of that digging into that limiting belief. And these limiting beliefs that we have, they have roots. They're like the weed that you pull the weed up and you yank it, but you didn't take time to really shake out and dive in and get all the roots. And so there's little roots in there that broke off that then they pop up again, right? In different ways. So you're like, no, I yanked that thing out. It's like, yeah, you left some of the, the root nodules in there and they came up again. And so like, okay, but at least this time it's smaller. So I got the big one out. I identified it. So this time, I'm like, oh, that's a smaller one. I can handle that. But that's our journey here, I think, is identifying, but then realizing there's lots of tendrils and those tendrils are going to pop up. And so we just lovingly take a breath, give ourselves the grace and the space to then question, why am I feeling this way? And then allow, right? Allow whatever it is to come up.
Well, so much goodness in there. Where do I want to go? Let's go back to the weeds.
All right.
So I've just been spending God knows how much time in my own yard trying to get rid of weeds. And yeah, that whole thing about having to get the root, having to get the tendril, having to get the pod at the bottom, all of that. That's one of the reasons that I think that transformation, for those of us who believe in transformation and want to see transformation in our lives, why we need not be surprised when there are multiple transformations. Because
Right.
a lot of times what happens, certainly has happened to me, that I've been able to deal with this. And as far as I could see, I had done that.
Right.
But now I see more. It's like, oh yeah, there's that. And I think that um, things like science of mind, new thought, the idea that we have so much more control in our lives than we think, that we have so much more ability than we think. I mean, that's tremendous. So every time we learn more, we can find more about that root. We can dig deeper.
Yes.
And oh, there's something else, but I've lost it. Well,
Well, you've heard the story of the overnight success, right? We all hear that someone just became an overnight success or someone had natural talent or whatever it is. And no, it's just they have been putting in the work, whether it's for their career, whether it's for their transformation, is you put in the work and you learn. And so, yeah, actors, right? Their first role, they may not have been spectacular. They did the effort, they did the project, and then they learned. And so then their next role, they showed up better. And then they learned and they got to maybe stretch their wings and do something different. And it's like us and our transformations that I have had so many ahas and wins. And I'll say, oh my God, I'm so glad I healed that limiting belief. And then months, 6 months, a year later, something comes up that challenges, like, I thought I healed that. It's like, you heal the branch of it, you heal the root of it, there is more, so go a little bit deeper. And I really agree with you that we have this growth and this expansion and these transformations, and it's never ending. I love the analogy of a tree. When we look at a tree, when it first pops out of the ground, we say, that's a tree, and we might give it a name. It's a sapling, right? As it grows up for this, like, you're a toddler, you're a teenager, you're a young adult. We are complete as people, as where we are in our life. Just like that tree is always a tree. It's always whole, complete, and beautiful and amazing as it grows. And we don't go, oh, that's not a tree yet because it's only an inch high. That's not a tree yet because it's only 5 feet. It has to get to 20 feet, 30 feet, whatever. And applying that analogy to ourselves is, I am right where I'm meant to be at the age, at the learning. And wow, how much more expansive it is when I choose to take responsibility. I choose to say, okay, how do I want my day to unfold? Do I want to look at it as, it's Monday, I have to go back to work? Or it's Monday, it's the beginning of a brand new day, beginning of a brand new week, right? And so we get to affect the health of our tree, shall we say, by what we're nurturing our tree ourselves with. And I shared this with one of my clients where she loves trees and she loves nature, and we were talking about drinking. And I said to her, would you pour alcohol on the roots of your real tree out there? She said, no. I said, so why would you pour alcohol? It's a poison. It wouldn't be good for it. And it's like, well, just what if you're a tree? Would you want to pour that into your system when you know it's not supportive? And it was interesting just to be able to say, if I were a tree, what would be the right nutrients for me? Sunshine, clear, fresh water, right? The right fertilizers, the right soil, the right environment is going to make that tree grow strong. Its roots are going to go deep and it'll grow, right? We've seen that. And even the story in the Bible of seeds were cast, and the ones that, were cast out on the rocky, hard ground, they
Mhm.
didn't grow. But the seeds that were in the fertile soil and nurtured, they grew. We get to be the farmer of the tree that we are. And we nurture our soil by the people we surround ourselves with, the news we listen to, the podcasts we listen to, the movies we watch or don't watch, right? We are nurturing the soil of our mind. We're nurturing the soil of our physical body by the food that we ingest, the beverages we ingest. And my mom has been saying for years, food is medicine. Food is medicine. Food is the nutrients for my body. And my phrase is, are you eating a rainbow and an alphabet on a regular basis? And of food, because if you think about, am I eating the different colors of the foods? And am I eating the variety of the letters? And the different foods have different minerals and
Mhm.
amino acids and vitamins. So when we can say it's, eating is easy. Am I eating a rainbow, and am I eating the alphabet of the right foods that are going to serve and support and nurture this tree? And that's my goal in life, is just to feel vibrant in my body. When I feel vibrant, when I have the physical energy and when I have the joy energy, wow, everything, it looks great, feels great, I'm unstoppable. And in that is how, and I think you're on the same path, is recognizing I only have one life. How am I living this life? Am I living this to the best of my abilities? Am I creating an extraordinary life that when Robert and I are 100 years old and we're sitting in our rocking chairs, and it might be on the beaches of Fiji, it might be in our mountain home, whatever that is, we have these amazing stories to reflect back to each other of this amazing life that we lived. And not a life of getting, but a life of giving, and a life of collaboration, a life of community. And it all starts with, wow, I am the keeper of my own tree. I'm responsible for me. I am mine. I am my responsibility to take care of me and how I show up in the world. And how I show up in the world affects all those in my world.
That it does. That it does. And that tree that you talk about, um, we tend to look at the branches, we look at the leaves, we look at what is above the ground, and we forget sometimes what's below the ground. Those
Yes.
strong roots, those connections, the roots that are connected literally to the other trees, and which literally tell other trees, help, and
Right.
other trees respond. How glorious is that? So, what I'm hearing in your life is that you have learned to stand up for yourself. You have learned to drop the concept of comparison, that
Yes.
you have opened your heart and your mind to a growth mindset where you're not only enjoying the fruits of the growth, but the growth itself.
Yes.
And that is, I mean, I can understand when I look at that, I can understand how joy can be such a big part of your life. It's like there is nothing that can bring more joy than authenticity,
Yes.
being able to truly present to the world who you are and whose you are. And you do that so beautifully.
Thank you.
Hmm.
One of my sayings that I live by is, everyone has their own definition of what life is. And I choose to think of life as a game, and games are meant to be fun. And so I'll say to my clients, how can you make it fun? Right? Whatever is before you. And instead of this is a task or this, how can you make it fun? How could you make your life fun? How can you create more joy, more opportunities for joy and happiness? And the other piece to that is it is your game. Your life is your game. So you get to make up the rules. So make it up so it works for you. Make it up so it's fun. And one of the things I had to realize and part of the self-discovery is realizing, wait a second, I think I'm playing someone else's game by their rules, thinking it's my game. And then what are the rules that I'm actually playing by? Those belief systems that were placed within us by society, by religion, by our parents, by our peers, by our teachers, right? That you're supposed to do this, sit up straight, stand up tall, shoulders back, which is good posture. But there's things like that that were just, they made sense at the time, but they may not make sense in this current society, this current environment. They may not make sense for the age you are anymore. So it's like, wait a second, this is my game. What are those rules that are subconsciously running? And what would I rather have the rules of my game?
All right. Before we end, I want you to tell us a bit about Radiant Joy Coaching.
Oh, I would love to. As I said, one of the first places that really, spoke to me was I am mine and I am my responsibility. And I love helping moms, especially who have spent their lives putting their kids first, the household, everything else first, because they kind of have to when your kids are little, right? But in the meantime, in the process, they themselves took a back seat. And so I help women primarily to realize, wait, I'm mine. I'm my responsibility. And with joy, and begin to claim back all the gifts of who they are. We walk through different processes of claiming the gifts of who I am, of writing down the ABCs of me. What are the adjectives and the adverbs that I use to describe me? Coming out with that powerful affirmation of here's the truth of who I am, that I'm not just my mom and dad's daughter, right? That and who I am now is not dependent on anyone else. That it's been a pathway, it's been a progress, but I've always been my own tree. And so how would I describe that tree? And how do I want people to perceive that? And what would I love? That's my favorite question that I learned from Mary Morrissey, asking, what would I love my life to look like? How would I love to feel? And what would I love as the next phase right now? What do I want to achieve? And how's that going to feel? I love Abraham Hicks is probably the first place that I really learned about the feeling and the vibration and how that shifts your energy. And so we get into that space of, do I want more joy in my life? Do I want more peace? What is it that I would love to be living? And how do I begin living that now? Not when I get there, I'll be joyful. When I get there, I'll be happy. It's no, how do we foster that right now within? Mm-hmm. And so I work with women on either a 3-month or a 6-month program. And we go through a lot of that questioning of what are the rules of your game? And what would you rather your rules to be? And what would bring you joy? What's going to light you up? And just shifting. And I don't know who to give it credit, to first, but I've learned and heard over the years that where you put your focus, right, is where. So I was taught when I was skiing, don't look at the tree that you want to avoid, look at the space between the trees. That's where you want to go. So a lot of our lives, and I can say this for myself, I was always trying to avoid that, right? The comparison was, I want that, but I feel like I'm not good enough for that. It's like, what is that sweet spot in between the trees where you want to be going? So let's shift our focus away from the problem, away from what's not working, onto what I would love. And it's been fabulous. It has been so fun to hear the the women say, I have this sense of aliveness in my life, that I wake up feeling energetic, I feel hopeful, and that shift, and to see what they're doing now because of that shift. And that simple question, what would I love? What would I love?
Wonderful. So people can reach you at Lara@radiantjoycoaching.com. And we wish you all of the best in your endeavors. I just want to thank you so much for your openness and for your ministry. I mean, you bring joy and love to a world that is so much in need. Such a blessing.
And
folks,
it's a blessing to me. So I will say, I do it for selfish reasons. And I'm
yeah,
really glad that, it works. It helps out there as well.
all right, folks, I want to thank you for being here with us, whether you're watching this live or see it at another time. And if you would like to be on the show, if you would like to share your story from false beliefs that limited you to that transformation and triumph, by all means, let me know. You can reach me here at zodemiro@gmail.com. And I would love to hear from you, or just your ideas about the show. Anything that you would like, because this is our show. So I look forward to seeing you next month. Lara, magnificent. Enjoy the time so much.
Thank you. So bye-bye.
All right. Now, if I can remember where my, oh, there it is.